How to get an audience for your poetry in 2023. 2023, it's happening. Happy New Year, guys. It is time to talk poetry
Definitely living in it.
once more.
My name is Matthias.
My name's Jeff. Welcome to Versus Live.
Why write poetry?
The poem is done. Like, what was the point here? I also don't know where this poem is going.
Poetry's very love-hate.
The worst possible thing is them just saying no.
So, good morning, good evening, afternoon, whenever you're watching this. My name is Jeff. Beside me is
Matthias. It's just me. That's all.
we have a special guest too. If you look even farther to the left, my left, just left. This is Al.
Hey, how y'all doing?
What's up, man? Yeah, we got clap it up for Al. Yeah.
Hey, how everybody doing?
Al, how would you describe your poetry?
My poetry is more of a standpoint on being a balance, like knowing that someone can have a negative past, a visionary mind, a positive way to look at the future, and still be able to pursue through and trust through every little step. We're just learning.
Like Barney.
I guess so. Just like money.
Yeah.
It was great.
It was the
He was
best.
I don't know how he survived
The best.
Now that he's here, he gets some good luck.
I know how to clean up. I'm just saying. But more importantly, we're going to be discussing audience, poetry, and things like that. And before we even discuss things, so I just kind of wanted to share an article that's kind of been making the rounds recently with regards to audience. And of course, I had to find it again. But just as I'm looking it up one more time, you guys may have seen that there was this, I forget if she was a writer or a poet, but she had a book. She was doing a book signing, and then she went to Twitter and she's like, no one came to my book signing. And then like all of these people, like very large authors like Margaret Atwood, I think Neil Gaiman came out and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that time I did a signing. There were like 2 people that came up and things like that.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the first things I question is, why does this happen? Any ideas that kind of come to mind? Why is this happening with writers?
And this is just from the standpoint of, like, even if you're just thinking of the standpoint of being part of an audience, right? Even if you see something really well promoted, even something can be really well promoted, but just not reaching the audience of people that are actually going to be on the ground coming to your event in person. And I think that's a lot of the communication issues that a lot of promoters, like when you're a poet and you're a writer and you're like, man, these are the people that are giving me feedback. It's not all the time that the people that are giving you kind of verbal feedback, either on Twitter, Instagram, even through emails, like it's not even all the time that these are the people that are going to be at your event when you need your event to happen. Sometimes you just got to grow that kind of stuff. But like you see it all the time. Like you see, even, and it's not even just with authors. It's just with anybody that has, a vested interest in kind of building an audience, even if they have thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers across platforms, getting people to show up in person, or having an event where you believe that people are going to show up in person. It's a little bit of a different kind of marketing acumen.
Yeah.
And also, I know the word acumen. I put that one together today. So,
Al, any thoughts for you? Like,
I would think it's gonna be. It's one of them things that's when you're waiting and you think it's gonna happen. I think that's the down part of the writer perspective. Like it may not happen as you think it is. Like the books might sell, the work might sell, but as in people showing up, and the world's been getting a little lazy on that. So that's how I kind of see it.
I mean, that's an interesting note too. I think people have gotten very used to just the Zoom culture that's kind of taken over. It's like trying to get people to come to an in-person event nowadays. I do wonder if it's more difficult now than it was in the past.
Yeah,
I kind of think so.
and I like that kind of viewpoint as well, because when you think about you think about even like kind of before things shut down, you only really had, I mean, if you wanted to get something first, if you wanted to be there first, you had to be there in person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then, a lot of when everything shut down, people had to innovate. And a lot of that innovation meant that that you were actively advocating for people, like online. And so it seems like, a lot of that innovation is kind of working against what the goals are now, because the goals are now like, okay, let's get everybody back out, let's get people to these events. But it's like you've kind of reverse engineered the process for them to even have to. Now it's like, okay, it's kind of the same thing. A lot of people, when it comes to like, working from home or going into office at work, I know myself personally, I would be like, man, like it'd be hard pressed to be like, okay, you have to go back into an office to to work, because you've already innovated out of needing to go into an office. You've proven, you have proof of concept. Hey, you can work from home and be just as productive, if not more productive. Cut out you cut out the travel. You've cut out a lot of the, like, kind of the the expenses when it comes to having to get to work, and now you're able to work from home. So I mean, it's kind of the same thing, where now a lot of the things that hey, would I like to meet my favorite author? Like maybe there's 6 out of the 100 people that commented on your post that are like, man, I really want to meet this person. Now, of those 6 people, you're probably exiting 4 of those people because they don't necessarily live near the location that you would even have the venue, and then you might exit out the other 2 just because of scheduling. So it's like there's a volume now. There's a threshold of volume that you use. I mean, again, during the time where people were having things remote, you didn't really have to worry about, because if you're just marketing out a Zoom link, it's like, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter. As long as you have internet, you're good and you're in.
Correct. You're right.
So then, where do you go, like, acknowledging these kind of new tendencies, just like with technology and things like that? What's the next step? Like, if you're an up and coming artist, or like emerging writer and things like that, is a word they use a lot. What is your responsibility for creating your audience, would you say? And this is for everyone too, not just us. Like, if you're in the chat, like, what are some thoughts for you guys have too?
I mean, honestly, I don't think that it's necessarily like that responsibility is kind of been the same since the beginning, which is, if you want your work to get out there, if you're invested in being seen and things like that. I think probably before, like, when you're talking about like poets, just like strictly poets, and this, I mean, I'm not even saying I'm like an expert on it, but I just know there's been a lot of people that you go to open mics, you perform there, you go to as many open mics as you can, maybe initially, to kind of get your experience and to be able to kind of perform in different rooms. But then, yeah, just being active on socials. I mean, as frustrating as it can be sometimes, kind of making sure that you're never too far away from people's minds is really crucial in a lot of ways, just so you can make sure that, okay, well, if somebody's thinking of an event, like, okay, this person's poems, like, I can see this person's poems being a good fit for my event, or I can see this person's personality and their work kind of fitting for my event. So yeah, I think the responsibility, I mean, that's really kind of always been the same. Now, how you do it, or the mechanisms that you use to do it, it's probably, that's a custom fit thing, depending on where you are in your personality even. But the responsibility has always been, the artist has to get out there.
I think another thing that just too is that I'm going to again focus on poets, is that I think poets in general are pretty bad at promotion. It's super common for a poet to have a reading coming up and then not posting anything about it until you know, in best case scenario, often a day before. Worst case scenario, 15 minutes before. Like, hey guys, by the way, if you're around, like, hey, I'm gonna be doing some poems here, and like that's just. The first word that comes to mind, I think, is irresponsible. In all honesty, because I think a lot of times, like if you're being booked for a show, like I do think that, I think the bulk of the promotion is dependent on the venue and the people that are booking you. But I do think you also have a bit of a responsibility too for kind of letting people who follow your work know what you're doing, and just keeping it hidden. I don't think is fair to your audience. So trying to provide as much advance notice as possible.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you know your audience and you know the people that like frequent your work, I think you can kind of get a good feel for the kind of frequency that you should have with it, as far as like promoting, as far as like putting things out. Of course, I think for individual events, it's like, is it in the venue's best interest, or like the creators of the event, is it of their best interest to promote heavy, or as heavy as, I mean, there's some events that they're a machine at this point, so like maybe they put out 2 flyers and that gets them their desired result. That's not most shows, and that's not even saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, because if you have to do 30 flyers in the month, but you're filling up your space and you're like getting over capacity and you're growing, I mean, that's just as advantageous as the people that are on the side. They're like, okay, I put out a couple and I get kind of the same result. So you really kind of just do whatever you find successful, and so it's probably going to take like some hit or misses. But yeah, I mean, I think each artist, they, if your goal on your end is to have people coming to the show that are here to see you, then yeah, I mean, when the venue puts out a flyer, maybe you put out a flyer, maybe you release the same thing. I know on a personal level, for me, I'm kind of in that like era right now. I have 2 shows coming up this coming up weekend, and I just like doing promo. I like putting out like little funny like skits and stuff like that. So for me, it's kind of just like fun to be able to do it. You know what I mean? But I think that that's not necessarily the same for everybody. And so, and like naturally it's going to be good for the venue, or it's good for you as an individual artist, and it's kind of instilling you as a brand. But out of everybody, I would hold myself responsible for that, naturally. And I know the people that Broken English is the event for both Friday and Saturday, and I know that they're really, really good and really solid when it comes to promotion and things like that. So just working on that collaborative effort and trying to bring as many people that would be interested in what you're doing to the show.
I kind of feel as though like me being a poet who's in a sense of like just building material and a way to get out there. I would say in my opinion, I want to have more creative lanes to draw people's attention. Like I'm like short stories. I even got like a little poem, like a poem movie I'm working on. Just like as in like just simply just poems.
Yeah.
Like instead of just skits or like poems, like everything's a poem. So I'm like really creative and really just make sure as in you want to be able to make your audience and the people who listen to you think like, yo, that guy be in a mind subconsciously every other day. And I know you got to put on a lot of material, but the creativeness and what you're putting in, that's going to give you that extra leverage, as in he's putting out heavy work in his material to make me like, I ain't never seen nobody do that like that. So that makes me stand out a little bit.
Yeah, no, and and that's actually a really good point, because I think one of the other things that's really hard for people to do, especially in the promotion space, is create things that really stand out. I think that a lot of times, you get, and this is just as somebody, who either bid on several flyers or just seen several flyers as well. It's just like, you kind of get like there's a lot of events that'll just have like the normal flyer, have you, maybe the other artists that are going to be on the show, have what the food is going to be at the event, the time of the day. And that's kind of like, again, that's not bad. And if it works for your audience, it works for your audience. And so I want to be clear, like, this is working for you, then it's good. But, a lot of times it's like, okay, you have to figure out a way to kind of break through that little membrane of, okay, man, somebody's just getting inundated, especially if they're in the poetry community already. If there's somebody who's, they go to shows all the time. So it's like, okay, well, how do you get this person to want to, hey, come see the poems that I'm doing over here? So, creating something. I know, like you had mentioned, like, like doing like a poetry, like play, and like being able to create stuff that's like really, really on brand for you, but it's also going to attract like kind of not only just your audience, but new people to the event. One of the things I found is that people are really attracted to seeing people like that actually are not afraid to show that they're putting forth effort. I think a lot of times artists can get into this mode where they feel like they're too cool. You know what I mean? They're like, man, I don't got to do all this. I don't got to do all that. I think sometimes people like to see like, okay, this person's actually, he's really, really working on, making sure I can get up to his show. So like, let me see if I can't make, a couple hours, open this couple hours to kind of honor, the effort that this person's putting through. So, yeah, I mean, it's just small stuff like that, making sure that, or trying to create something that is, something that maybe somebody has not seen before in the promotion space, or maybe doesn't see as often. And then, really showing like, hey, I'm putting forth some effort for you to come to this particular show.
Or
How often, like if you have an event coming up, how often do you directly message people that your event's coming? And if the answer is no one, why? My answer is I usually don't. But But the reason I bring this up is now because day job wise, like just trying to work on like marketing and things like that. It's very interesting developing relationships with people one-on-one in a way that a message can do. I mean, it's much more personal. It's kind of the digital equivalent almost of a handshake. So something I'm doing, like for instance, my business now, and I I know like I feel like, again, like poets are like at odds with like business and marketing and things like that. There's just kind of like this like capitalism, but I do think there's some practices that can be actually really helpful. So if I'm reaching out to someone that I want to be aware of me, I'm reaching out to them, but I'm not reaching out and saying like, hey, buy this product. I'm reaching out to be like, hey, how did you get interested in this? What are you doing? What's your project? What are you working on? Showing interest in the other person.
Jeff is like, sometimes I feign interest in
like,
this person.
No, but it's not.
But
But that's. I think people can see, like, if it's not coming from a genuine place, I do think people see through it.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think if you're able to kind of find a way to be genuinely interested in people's journey. So, for instance, I'm an English teacher. I want to find out the things that people are having a hard time with. Even like, I don't care if they buy my stuff. If they buy it, cool. If they don't, cool. But like, I want to know, what are you finding difficult? What are some things that, and if you find something difficult, why do you find it difficult? How long have you found it difficult for? Because these are things that inform me. I learn from you. This is a collaboration. This is a relationship. There's give and there's take. And I think that one of the things I see with social media, with like flyers and things like that, I think it's a very one-sided thing. It's like, I'm doing an event. I want you to come to my event. I want you to come to my event. Like, there's this a lot of kind of, what's the reciprocity? You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of times that reciprocal nature kind of feels a little bit lost. Or maybe it's just so assumed that I want you to come to my event because I think you're going to have a good time. But a lot of times, even that part's not even clear. A lot of the times it's just like, hey, come to my event, give me your money, and watch this person I'm bringing in. But I don't even know why you chose this feature. I don't know what about their work you think is going to resonate with me specifically and things like that. So I think that a lot of times with promotion, we are missing some of the aspects of the dialogue with the people we're reaching out to.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. I think that there has to be, you have to create buy-in for the person on the other end, as opposed to them just feeling like, uh, as opposed to them feeling like exactly what you said. Like, there's this exchange. My show cost $10, $15, $20. I want the $20 that you have so that when you come to the thing that I'm doing, that you're watching the things that I've done, right? So I definitely think there is something to that. I think that, I mean, it kind of depends, honestly, if it's a show that I'm doing, like if I'm putting on the show, I very seldom, it'll just be like to the people that I know that have either shown interest, that have reached out to me on an interpersonal level. I might, reach out to their DMs and be like, hey, just wanted to let you know, hey, this is the thing that we're kind of talking about. If you wanted to show up, this is the thing that we were talking about, at this juncture or what have you. If it's like I'm doing like a spotlight feature coming up,
Check that.
check.
Cool. We're back.
Oh, we're here.
Yeah, we're good. Sorry for interrupting.
No, you're fine. I don't know where I was. But yeah,
Just talking about your dating fam and how you're reaching out.
Yeah, just I think that, I mean, it's kind of I reach out more on like an interpersonal basis. Like it's strictly if I know that you've mentioned something like this before, or if I know that me and you've had this kind of conversation before, then yeah, I might reach out to you just to let you know, hey, I'm going to be in town to do this kind of show, or I think you actually might like this kind of event. Other than that, I don't think that I necessarily reach out directly. I just try to kind of promote as consistently as possible. That way, I come across their socials at some point.
I think that that kind of highlights something. I think that, especially if you're a new artist or like someone that's like suddenly taking interest in trying to get your work out there, I think, and this is something that we did a workshop with Dante, who just got a self-published collection, I guess, within the last 2 years now. Yeah. Check out the workshop again on the Diverses channel if you're trying to self-publish. But one of the things he's mentioning is that, hey, when he had his book self-published, he already felt like he had an audience. He had that benefit. And he's able to, work that. But if you're just starting out, the time to start building the audience isn't when you have the new poem out or the time when you have the new collection out. No, the time to do that is now. This is like, and if you're like, but like, I don't have anything to even promote right now. Well, it's not even necessarily about you. It's about the relationship you have with people. So this is the time to find out what other people are doing. Reach out to poets that in the community. Be like, hey, like, what events are you doing? Where are you showing up? When was last? Do you have a poem that got published? I'd love to read it. This is the time to. Again, this is the poetry world. It's a big world, but it's a really small world. This is the time to start really developing those connections. And I think also showing interest in others is the way to also get people to show interest in you.
Right, and that's kind of the key aspect in the key word when we're talking about like poetry community, because I think a lot of times people don't realize how transparent it is that the only time that we're interacting is when you have something that you're trying to sell me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that one of the really negative things are, it's like if when you get people that they don't either they don't go to open mics. There's a lot of open mics in the city, but when you don't really go to open mics, they don't really go to like different shows. But whenever they have a show, now you see them. Now they're like, hey, just want to let you know this is a show that I want you to come to.
Or even worse, the people that go to an open mic, read their poem, and leave.
Oh my God.
Mm.
Yeah, they just shows like all their intent because again, it's like it's about community. I mean, and I think that one of the things that, especially if you want to show that, hey, I'm part of the community, I'm not just like a person that's selling you things, is that like, hey, I'm invested in the work you're producing. I'm invested in your trajectory. Like, oh man, that was like really interesting. And again, it's like you're not doing it to sell them at the end. Like you're doing it because you're genuinely part of the community. It just so happens that that is the way for you to ensure, okay, like you're pouring your support into the community. Also, you have to bring value when we're talking about like your event or anything like that. Like I think there's a lot of I love Detroit. Detroit is like a really great city.
Here's the burn. Here comes the
No,
burn.
there's not any burns. No, I'm just saying like Detroit's a really great city, and actually Detroit is. Detroit's it's home to some of my favorite poets. One of the things I was actually I won't like call him out by name. He's he's one of my OGs. But I was talking to him, and he was just like, yeah, like one of the problems with our community, and it can happen with any poetry community, to be honest. But one of the problems with the community is that like you had people that would start shows either because they had like beef with somebody else that is at another show, so they just start their own, right? And so that's more fracturing community. And then it's like you're doing the same thing, and a lot of them would do it on the same day, so they would have like two. They would start out like one Wednesday show that everybody goes to and everybody's fine with it, and then there's some kind of beef that happens, and then the person that has beef is like, well, I can't go to that show anymore. I guess I have my own show, and then they'll start their own show, and then it's just kind of fracturing things, and then something will happen there, and then they'll keep having to create more institutions. And again, it can happen anywhere. It can happen with any poetry community. I'm sure it has happened to some degree in Columbus and in many cities. It's just, I'm just saying, like, that's just from one of the conversations I had from one of my good friends there in Detroit, which is just to say that, like, if you're thinking of creating an event or being part of an event, I would really heavily consider, kind of what value you're bringing to not only the people that are there, maybe the city. If you're trying to create an establishment, if you're trying to say like, this is my poetry show, so why is that poetry show? Why is that open mic? Why is this kind of poetry event space needed in your city? And are you fit? Not only are you filling a need, but are you doing that need justice? And if you can kind of align with those things, typically it pans out well because people are typically looking for something if the need is genuine.
I never really seen like I never really heard nobody say expressed as in poetry is more of the community than more just a business aspect. Because more I'm thinking as in, okay, of course I want to put my work out and put my business, and yeah, I want people to buy my stuff. But as a community sense, hearing it said like that makes me think exactly what I want to bring to. Like I want to bring hope. I want to bring like enlightenment, empowerment, and with me bringing that has me thinking of the vision of community more than having a community, because that's where it starts.
Yeah.
What are you feeding us? Because it ain't all of a business sort, because the business doesn't work like that. The business work better as how much of the person you invest in, and I'm investing in most of them. It's a us thing. Because most of my experiences, it's the same experiences people gonna have. It's just a lot of people who not using their voice, and I'm voicing for those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of what, like, along the same lines of what you're saying is when you're talking about the poetry community, a lot of times this, I mean, even because even if you're like, okay, I want to sell like a poetry book, right? Most of your audience, if you're selling your poetry book, are not going to be the fellow poets. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like most of the people that are going to be the market for your book, I would think, is like people that maybe they have an interest in poetry, and maybe they just like you, they like your personality, and they want to purchase the book because they like your personality, or they might be a part of the poetry community at large, but they might not be part of your poetry community. You know what I mean? And so I think, that's one of the things to really consider when we're talking about kind of what we're bringing into these spaces, because again, it can be very transparent, especially even if we're not even from the same city, if we just kind of meet each other and I'm like having this conversation with you and like it's like you're a salesman and you're not a poet. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a lot of people that, and the thing is, it's perfectly fine if you can be honest with yourself about it. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of people that are like, okay, I'm a salesman first. I'm trying to boom, boom, boom. I'm trying to get this copy off, this copy off, this copy off, and that's like not even bad. But it's just to say that, like, it can be. It can be seen like, okay, well, maybe you're not part of the poetry community. Maybe, like, and what do you have to offer the poetry community if you're not? Like, what do you have to offer the poetry community if you're not particularly, man, I'm working on my craft, I'm not trying, like, what are you doing outside of that? So yeah, I mean, I think that's like one of the things to kind of consider when you're bringing it into spaces. Just like, I'm not, when it like, let's say when it comes to like an open mic, maybe at an open mic, I'm like, okay, here's my books in the back, they're $5 or what have you. But for the most part, I mean, the open mics, as far as I see them, and my brother, like JG, like he used to tell me all the time, like, these, like, the open mics, they're a really good space to sharpen yourself and to work on your material and to really work on your poems and to meet new people and to kind of like really, sharpen your performance chops. But like, that's not like the end goal for there's going to be shows, there's going to be like, features, they're going to be spaces for you to really platform your own work. That's going to be, not the end page for your poems, but that's going to be, where you're really, okay, you are doing that work so you can really do well in this space. So yeah, it's like, I don't want to say that it's like trying to sell, like, I don't know. It's hard to even describe. It's like I'm selling water bottles, but like I'm at a water park. It's like everybody has access to water, right? So, and it's not even that, like, if you can't be like, your water is good, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really like your water. Like, your water is the best water out of all the water. But it's like, the places that you're gonna really get that off is like when you're the guy with the water and people don't have the water, and now you can be like, hey, look at what I got. I have water. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe I was just thirsty. So,
but I think that's an interesting point, though, is that, I think a lot of times people have writing.
Yeah.
And they kind of just view it as that. This is what I wrote. But it's not necessary. There's not really an investigation of like, what hole am I filling in the poetry community, but even like the world at large with this work. And same thing with events. If you're doing an event, what hole are you filling with this event? What's the purpose behind it? What's the motivation? And I think a lot of times people aren't, questioning or investigating the motivations, behind, what's the reason? Why are you doing this? Like, what is the purpose behind, putting this work out there, or like going to the show, or featuring, or even like accepting a feature? Like there's people out there that they'll just accept, I'm invited to be a feature. Yeah, sure. Sign me up. But like, there's no questioning about, okay, what is this about? What's your mission? Like, what's the end goal here? And I guess that's kind of something I would really be questioning.
I mean, yeah, I think there's something to that. There's absolutely something to that. I think probably the person that I am now, as opposed to maybe the person that, I don't know, 9 years ago, was 2022. So I guess my first feature,
sir.
Jesus. So yeah, my first feature was like 10 years ago, right? And for that very first, like my very first feature, it's like I didn't have any questions. You know what I'm saying? Naturally, I was just like they reached out. It was actually in Cleveland, and they reached out. They said, hey, you know, they had come to an open mic. I mean, and actually, this is, you know, kind of part of the, hey, like perform at open mics, kind of sharpen yourself up at open mics. But one of the people that went to their shows, went to the Cleveland show, had came to Columbus for an open mic. They saw me, and then they posted me on their story or something. They posted me on IG, and then the showrunner actually reached out to me and was like, hey, I like your work. Do you got more work like that? I said, probably. Who the heck knows? And then they said,
The answer is always yes to that question, by the way.
Yeah.
So that, even if you don't have it,
Oh,
the answer
no.
is yes.
Yeah, I mean, by the time you get to the venue, you will have. But yeah. So I mean, it's like, you know, I'm fairly confident. Like I wrote some more material even after that, like after the offer, so I could be like, okay, I have like 6 poems or something like that for the feature. But which is just to say that, like, you know, there's A, value in going to these open mics, and then B, it's like I think that there is some value in kind of jumping in even when you're not ready. I think that a lot of times people do this with open mics. Even a lot of like, as a host, one of the things I used to get under my skin the most, and again, everybody's process is their own, so I don't down it. It's just, it kind of gets under my skin when somebody's like, yeah, I'm working on something, it's not ready for the open mic. I'm like, you're working on something, that's the reason for the open mic. Like that, what you just said, just like, yeah, I got like the first 2 drafts done, I'm looking from like, what? Because the thing that you're telling me is that, or the thing, maybe what I'm hearing, so, you know, maybe you're not, that's not what you're saying, but this is what I hear. Hey, I'm getting this thing ready for open mic, because once I do it on the open mic, like, that's it. Like, I've done it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, no, that the open mic should tell you where you should go for the rest of the 70% of this process. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you get done, and this is just for maybe some of the performance pieces or performance heavy pieces, because it's like you write the poem and now you're like, man, like I've seen how it works in the audience. Maybe your goal for the poem is just to have written the poem, and maybe that's fine. But if your goal as a poet is to get more work into, you know, perform other places, then performing at the open mic is just informing you about, you know, what you're doing with the poem. So I mean, that's kind of part and parcel to the process.
I want to make sure that if people are watching this, they also kind of leave, you know, regardless of what stage you are in your writing career, practical strategies to get people to show up for your next event. So, like, if you just guys take like a moment to kind of think, if you could have to give like 3, and we may have already mentioned them, and that's fine. But if you had to give yourself 3 tips to someone like
Please, no, I'm begging.
No, but actually, I do think having an emotional appeal is actually, you know, I think a lot of times people are very hung up on like very objective things, but if you're able to try to connect, you know, an emotional reason
Jeff's crying
to what you're doing. I'm just trying to defend it right now. So like, if I had to give someone like 3 tips to be like, okay, you just did a reading, no one showed up, you never want to have that happen to yourself again. Yeah. Probably one of the first things I would be doing is, if there's other poets that you respect their work and you want them to show up for you, there's no harm in telling them that. So I would be reaching out people directly and developing that relationship more. I'd be like, hey, I really respect your work. I want to find out more about your work. I also would love to have your support, you know, in the future. So, and you don't have to word it like that. You don't have to do it all at once. These are things you can kind of build up for, but that's probably the first thing I would really recommend. Second thing I would do is, if you have another show coming up, the time for promotion is now. You know, if your show's coming up in the spring, You know, just like do a quick thing. Hey guys, this is coming up in the spring, and then you can go silent on it for a while, but just kind of start the process, you know, and then as it gets closer, you can start ramping up, you know. So that's probably the second thing I would really start recommending. And then the third thing is you also just trying to find ways to start building your audience. So for instance, one of the things that we've done here at the Versus, our whole platform is trying to promote the voices of underrepresented poets. That's our whole goal, you know. So yeah, I mean, I want people to find my own work, but we have this greater mission, this greater thing. So now, you know, we're able to kind of build this audience, and then some of that can get into other things too. And this is where, you know, also things like, we talked about this before, but it's things like starting blogs, YouTube channels, you should like a social media page just for your work. Like there's no reason in 2023 to not have these things, you know, and you don't have to have all of them, but I would say pick one platform to be like, okay, this is going to be my art platform. This is where I'm going to create my artist profile, and this is where I'm going to post regularly, whatever that means to you. If it means once a week, cool. If it means every day, cool. If it means, you know, try and do like a TikTok or a short something. Yeah, a quick tip: short form vertical video is the way that social media is going right now. But you know, whatever you're doing, if you can't do that, a picture. If you can't do that, a text post, something regular, consistent, just to start building that audience to get ready for your next show. Those would be my 3 tips.
Yeah, I think I would start out it given like the premise that you said, like you had a reading and nobody showed up. I honestly, it's kind of hard to say, and like I think this might be something that is probably, and maybe I'm just like a pessimist person. But I think the first thing I would investigate is like, man, like do I 1A really have something to offer to the poetry community or to like audiences, right? I think a lot of times, and this is like this is something that I do with myself as well. Is like a lot of times I'm thinking like, okay, like, am I doing something unique? Am I doing something that people want to like be part of, want to see, want to listen to, want to hear? And then I think I have to try to be as honest with myself on that part. And I think that level of introspection can also, I think what you could also do is kind of invite people that you respect and that you believe will be honest with you. Because, you know, you kind of bring in other people's opinions. Okay, so how do you think I did? What do you think I'm bringing with these poems? Because I think a lot of times it's like we're trying to fix. It's like if you have like I mean, actually, to make it like clear, this would be completely applicable in every other profession. If you made cakes and you were like, man, nobody came to my cake shop today to buy cakes. Like, what the heck is going on? And then like somebody were like, hey, I don't know if somebody's told you, but your cakes are horrible. Like you would be like, oh, like at some point you would be like, okay, well, hold on. Okay, maybe I need to be better at making cakes. You know what I mean? And maybe not even just be better, but I need to find the audience for the cakes that I have. Like maybe I have cakes that are like these like savory cakes. Maybe a whole bunch of people don't really like it, but there's 10,000 people in your region that would appreciate it. How do you get out to those people? How are you doing that? How are you figuring that audience out? Like that's what you should be focused on. So either really try to figure out, okay, am I really something that's unique, or am I doing something unique? Or am I just imitating what I kind of see out there in the field, that what I see that's being successful? Because what a lot of people don't tell you is like, if you're imitating something that you see successful, the thing that's happening in the consumer, like, is there like, there's art. I already have this, like, art, this guy that does this kind of poem, that does that kind of thing. Like, oh man, like you might be good at it, but like this guy's already doing it, and I'm already going to this guy's show. So like, why would I go to your show? So that's one. So like, that's like 1A is just trying to see what you're bringing to the market. And then maybe 1B is like, if after I've kind of proven myself, okay, like maybe I know that I'm bringing something individual and good to the market, then like really trying to investigate like how am I marketing then? Because like clearly I'm not getting to who I should be getting to. I think 2 is right in line with what you said. The time to market is now. I think probably the most important thing is to understand, or is to establish that the thing that you're working on is a brand, not just an event for a brand. And once you kind of wrap your head around that, then you'll understand that like getting people to be aware of the things that you're doing and what you are isn't just connected to when the event comes up. Because, you know, like let's say my event is in 3 months, and because my event is in 3 months, I have 90 days to market. And maybe I don't want to be marketing the event every single day for 90 days. Maybe I'm marketing the brand every single day. And then every third day is like, and hey, you know what's connected to this thing? This event that's happening on this given date. And so I think that'll kind of it'll kind of work the gears a little bit more when it comes to promotion, because now you're like, I'm not just maybe I'm not just talking about my event. Maybe I'm talking about who I am. Maybe I'm talking about who's part of this event. Maybe I'm talking about the location. Maybe I'm talking about how to get there. You know what I mean? Like it kind of creates a little bit more, a couple more avenues for you to really stay active when it comes to social media. And then lastly, I would just say be part of the community that you're trying to communicate with, because there's nothing more alienating than trying to talk to people that, and you don't even really speak their language. You know what I mean? Like it's, you know, if I don't really know how to communicate with this group of people, and the only thing that they know is I'm yelling at them to give me money and come to my thing, then like, okay, sure, I'm hearing you say that, but I have no personal investment in this person, you know, being successful at their show, or even wanting to come to this person's show. But if you're in the community and you're creating community, and then also I think if you stop making money the end game for you, because I think a lot of times it's like money is like the end game, which it's not the end game. You know what I mean? Because it's like in order to continue to do things, you have to, you know, there's a fiscal kind of end to that. But it's like, okay, what is the value that you're bringing to people? Like that should be your end game. And then hopefully if you're bringing the value to the people, then they're willing to exchange that for money to be present. So just trying to figure out that value.
All right, I kind of figure if I was in a situation, honestly, and nobody would come, like I was selling books and nobody would come to like my book show, I'm going to treat this as I treat everything in life. I'm going to make people regret it in a positive way. For a positive way. I'm going.
You've been married before, Al.
I'm going to make you regret it in the most positive way I know how. Now, this is my step. This is how I look at life. I am going to make sure you know how unique I am. I'm going to put my heart and soul into my effort. And maybe we're going to get past the point that, hey, I didn't show up that one time and I'm sorry. I already forgave you. Now it's time you recognize the greatness.
You've already been forgiven.
Yeah. Now you have to recognize the greatness I carry.
Walk away with your cares. Attack my son for the meek shall inherit.
So I would say be vulnerable. Because it's going to become times where you're going to get let down, but that's part of the process. No one in life
almost, you know?
have ever succeeded going at one thing once. You got to repeatedly go at a different type of way every time. Be creative, be vulnerable, think outside the box. You have to show people that they're not only investing in you, they are moving with you. You have to have people with you through everything you're doing. That's how you're the community. If you can get the community's voice and become the community's eyes, you will create the community within yourself. Okay, secondly, I would just analyze, what am I talking? Is it current? Is my material current events? Is it old? Is it something that's boring? Am I talking? Am I really getting the listener's ear? Because my material may be so far fetched. If I'm talking about like lint at the bottom of the refrigerator, there's not gonna be enough people to be like, yeah, it's not a good topic, big dog. Like,
I'm interested.
I'm there.
So focus on, what are you putting out? Is your target audience a little bit of everybody, little bit of this, little bit of that? Are you catching their ear? So I say focus in on what you're talking about. And then last but not least, like we was piggybacking what you were saying, make sure you build. I would say I would build a strong foundation of communication with the person I'm looking up to. Like I have a coach, have someone that's going to have you reliable. Like, hey, what are you putting out? Cause that'll have the eyes in the back of your head. Like, yeah, I was being lazy the whole day. I been playing 2K. I done got carried away. But as in for me, if I got somebody that's believing in me, if I got someone that no matter where I'm at in life, they're saying, keep going, positive affirmation, empower me, bringing so much encouragement, I don't want to let that person down because that person believes in me. So that's it for me.
Final thoughts? Anyone have any final thoughts?
Have a nice night.
Hold up, killer. We got one final section. By the way, if you have other suggestions for people trying to build an audience, we would love to hear them in the comments or the chat, whichever platform you're choosing. But it is time to close us out with a section that is called Poetry in the Wild. Wait, what's that over there? I love that. Okay, so Matthias has given us a post. I'm going to blow this up so we can all take a great big look at this. Give me 1 second. Patience, people. Patience. We are 2023 is the year of the patience. You didn't know that, did you?
I knew that. I was well aware.
I was informed. Okay, but here we are. Matthias, what are we looking at?
Okay. Here's the thing.
Take it away.
And I do this every week, man. I kind of went into the jungle of poetry, and I just wanted to pull out something that I thought not only spoke to the soul, spoke to the mind, and spoke to the people of the internet in a way that was so intrusive that it almost felt like they kicked down the front door of my mind and sat on my couch and said, I'm here.
That's breaking and entering.
Yeah, that is breaking and entering. But you know what? We'll allow it. Now, this author, Doobie, I believe, I'm not sure if that's how they pronounce their name. Dion Woolley, I believe. And now this is an excerpt that actually took place today, January 3rd, 2023, 3:55 p.m. So this is fresh poems. This is a fresh poem. Okay. And before I read this, I just want everybody to just kind of close your eyes. If you're listening on YouTube, or any medium, go ahead and close your eyes. Unless you're driving, do not follow that instruction if you're driving.
Unless you're in a Tesla. But even
if you're in a Tesla, it's going to do it itself. Just like, kind of supervise it a little bit. But just imagine yourself. I'm hungry when I initially read this. And so this kind of hit me a little bit differently. It says, before you dig into that box of chicken wings, think about how many chickens died to give you that 12 piece.
Mm.
And wow, you think, and I usually don't cry, but you think about, kind of what chickens bring to the table, right? You think about, poultry, right? They're feathered, they're beaked, they got 2 feet, and it's not outside the realm of possibilities for you to really kind of really encapsulate in your mind when you're eating that 12 piece by yourself, because I can eat a 12 piece by myself. When you're thinking to yourself, wow, how many chickens had to die to give me that 12 piece? I've never done the math because I don't know, what all pieces.
To, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd rather not think about it. I'm thinking about it.
And think about it. All right. So, let's just kind of break down the work that we have here, because I think there's some real intentionality.
I like the line break on think.
Yeah,
They could have stopped there.
they could have stopped. Because I like the line break on think because there's a comma right after wings, and so there's like this double pause almost. It's like before you dig into that box of chicken wings, think. Now I'm there.
I also like the peace. The last word gets its own line. It's also peace, like peace out.
Yeah.
Like ending on the that's
Yeah,
deep.
if you're just
Yeah.
if you're listening to it, it's like you don't know what you're like. Is it?
You
the
thought they were
12
done
piece?
talking? No, they were saying 12 piece.
They're saying it. They were saying it. So what were your thoughts?
Well,
Al?
I'm a person who loves to eat healthy,
Okay.
so I'm gonna go at an approach, honestly, from my opinion.
Do you
Wait,
eat chicken
do you
wings?
eat chicken wings?
Now, I have eaten chicken wings before.
I'm not eating them now. I'm not eating them right now in this moment.
I am so sorry I invited him to this podcast. Don't worry, he will not be back.
I'm not eating
But
them
as
at this
in-
moment. Like, do I have them in my book bag? Yes. Only 3. It's not a lot.
But as in we grow older and I look at health wise and where
What are you trying to say about me, Al?
I didn't say anything.
What are you trying to...
I
I
didn't
think you're saying it.
I'm gonna let you finish.
I'm growing. I'm like I seen an article where they said like chicken is created, like it's like man made. So like down the road, I wouldn't want to, when my money get right, I will not be eating a lot of things that
Period.
will just
Wait, chicken's man-made?
yes.
That's an interesting... We could spend a whole episode on that.
Hey.
We could talk about that.
Hey,
what came first?
I read the documentary.
Or the guy that
I
made
read
it?
I read the documentary.
It was a documentary.
Yeah, it was a documentary. I watched the whole thing.
There's an hour and a half of
It's
this
over.
guy in a room like, I made this. I made it.
Over.
And he won't cross the road. Cross, thank you.
There was no flour, no grease in there. It was real smack raw. But as we grow older, there's so many animals and so many things getting second processed, so many hormones in these
Yeah.
foods.
Okay.
The best way in life, as you see more healthy people, more happy people, they're eating fruits. They're going back more as in nature. Like they're more like as in how I'm
Chickens are
looking.
in nature?
Not these chickens.
Ah, they got
Nah.
they got place, buddy. Somebody's placing these chickens. But that's how I see things, as in make sure you're more healthy for the long run.
So I guess now we're brought back. When's the last time you had chicken?
I had it
Why are you trying to re-traumatize the man? You don't have to answer that.
last time I had chicken was from my little sister had a movie night over for the family. And that was like 4 weeks ago?
So a month ago you had chicken?
Yeah.
Was that the last opportunity you had to have chicken?
No. I walked away.
So at the other end, she was like, "Well, I'm gonna abstain." I know the guy that made this, and he's not a colonel. I'll tell you that.
Definitely not a carrot.
I also like that the second line, you could read it as, about how many chickens died to give you that? 12. It's like answering his own question. But how many chickens died to do that? 12. It's like, oh, piece. It's just,
It could be like somebody's like talking to Jesus and he's talking about his apostles. Like, I mean, how many chickens died to give you that 12? And it's just like, oh, wow.
so many layers. I would consider removing the punctuation. I think it would open you up to way more interpretations. In my opinion.
You know, and I think it's interesting that the very first word, the before, is the lowercase b, because it makes it almost feel like you're interrupting the thought. Like, you know, there was a heft of weight even before this, and then it's like they're stopping you, and you're like, whoa, before you dig into that box of chicken wings, before that happens. And so,
I mean, yeah, that is interesting. I mean, the choice, because whatever you put first gets the more the agency, right? So it's like, what is the more important thing, the before thing or the thinking? You know, so I think the emphasis on time over thought is an interesting choice.
That's fair. And you also got to imagine, you know, it's 3:55 p.m. This isn't even like around the time of a discernible mealtime. This is well before your dinner and well after lunch. And so, like, this is somebody that's they've eaten earlier in the day. They're maybe starting to get a little bit of the hunger pains, a little bit, and it's kind of rustling up. And they're just thinking to themselves, whoa. I'm not even in a space where I have to even be hungry to really even recognize this is wrong. This guy made these chickens. And how many of them had to die? Like, how many of those man-made chickens had to die for you to really enjoy that 12-piece?
Yeah, I gotta look it up.
Well, unfortunately.
All right, as Matthias is looking
it's
for a
chicken
man-made chicken,
man-made,
I'm going to close
not like
out
a
this
man-making
show.
chicken.
If I had a gavel, I'd be ringing it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Guys, this is Diverses. This is Diverses Live. We are here on Tuesdays, live from Third Way Cafe. So thanks to Tim if he's watching this.
Thanks, Tim.
Yes, this is a wonderful venue. Also, just like Al kind of was just wandering around, you guys can join us. We are here, but we love having people join us. Whether you just want to be on camera, we've had people kind of just sit back and just chill and watch the show, and that's perfectly fine. So if you want to be part of our in-person audience, you're more welcome to, in addition to our virtual audience as well. We'll be back on Tuesday. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys have a good night. Happy 2023, and we will see you next Tuesday.
See ya.
Take care.